morning, and thank you for watching us, for those of you who are on the webcast and those of you who are here in the audience, to the Pre-State Allocation Board meeting for March 28th, 2012. One announcement, the board meeting has been moved to the state capitol. It will be at 4 o'clock in room 112. And to give you some highlights on the funds that are remaining and what we were able to release this past month, we were able to release $163 million in fund releases, which leaves us a balance currently of $483.3 million left in the remaining bond sales for cash that we have. And as the new construction bond authority, this represents Proposition 1D, 55, and 47. For new construction, we had a total of $14.98 billion. Of that, we've apportioned 95% of that. That's the shaded area that's almost coming together. We have remaining about $307.3 million left to apportion, which, $307 million left to apportion, which represents about 2.1%. So as you can see, the pie is slowly coming together. With that, I want to turn it over to Brian O'Dell, who will provide some highlights of today's board meeting. Thank you.
Good morning. We have just one agenda highlight to review this morning, and that has to do with final adoption of proposed emergency regulatory amendments to the Seismic Mitigation Program. These are the amendments that were approved by the board last June and have been in effect since September of last year. And they were approved on an emergency basis. So if it's a regular reg track with no emergency, there's a 45-day public comment period that OAL requires before they will approve it. But if it's an emergency basis, the public comment period is split up into two sections. There's a quick 5-day public comment period that these regulations went through, and they were approved by OAL on an emergency basis, which means that there's certain things that have to happen to make them permanent, one of which is a longer public comment period and some other forms that need to be filled out. So again, these regulations have been in effect since last December, but sort of on a temporary basis to make them permanent. For the comment period was opened up, and we did receive one comment, and it had to do with earthquake mapping, wanting that to be an option that the California Geological Survey could use. And OPSC took a look at it, and the way the regs were written, we feel that the CGS could use any type of earthquake mapping that it, that it feels appropriate. So as a result, we didn't think that there were any changes needed for the regs, but it does require through the OAL rules, the APA, that this go back to the board and have them review it and make that determination. So that's what the item is for today. All right, that's the only one for me. Now let's turn it over to Mr. Bill Savage, and he will talk about the implementation committee. Thank you.
Good job. Good morning, everyone. Uh-oh, I already screwed it up. Good morning, Bill Savage, Assistant Executive Officer for the State Allocation Board, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the Implementation Committee meeting of March 9th, 2012. The Implementation Committee has items that are referred from the State Allocation Board for review, and there are two future items that were referred at the board meeting in February, and that is priority and funding issues. When cash becomes available in priority funding rounds, do we use the current list? Do we take it to another list if there's timing issues with it? So the board asked for us to discuss and get back to them with some recommendations on that. And then we had an appeal, Sequoia Union, where the board asked us to look at the issues for minimum essential facilities and K-8 schools to make sure that our regulations were provided school districts with flexibility for funding facilities where they were needed in the different school situations. What we looked at our meeting in March was application processing and approvals beyond bond authority, or unfunded lists, workload lists, project lists. We also looked at a final review of SB 128 regulations, and we looked again at the project information worksheet. So applications beyond bond authority. As everyone is aware, we are in a period where our bond authority is rapidly becoming exhausted, and so the board has asked us through the work of the new construction subcommittee of the State Allocation Board to review how we handle the processing of applications when there is no bond authority, and what types of lists we would set up, what type of approvals. And we were also asked to look at this in the context of administrative costs for the program as we went forward also. So the staff had a presentation that looked at a summary of previous lists from the program since its inception, including lists for accepting projects when there's no authority and accepting projects and processing them when there's no cash, which is our current situation. So this is a summary list that staff provided us, and you can see that, for example, an unfunded list in 1999 created for a modernization program due to lack of cash. There was then an apportionment date in 2000. Then in 2000, there was one for lack of authority. You can read through the list yourself. So I think to summarize, it's clear that the program has gone through periods where we've lacked either authority or cash. There's been various levels of processing that we've completed, and so I think we have the ability to look at our history and how we've gone through those times to see what we might do during this situation. And staff then reviewed the current regulations in force, SFP Regulation 1859.95, which basically specifies that OPSC will continue to accept and process applications and present them to the State Allocation Board for approval, and they will be then placed on an unfunded list. So this is the current authority that is in the program now for accepting applications beyond authority. Next, the staff looked at and provided us with a list, a summary of what are the different types of lists that you'll find. If you go into your State Allocation Board agenda packet, you'll find a variety of workload lists, project lists, and unfunded lists that are there, and the staff then reviewed those, and this slide shows you the different types of lists that we have in the program and what the status of the application is when it's on that list, what the funding determination is when it's on that list, and what the apportionment status is when it's on that list. So a really great summary of the different types of lists and processing levels that we have in the program, so we can begin to prepare a recommendation for the State Allocation Board as to what we should do in the current situation that we have. There was a significant amount of stakeholder input from the committee and from outside groups that attended the meeting. We also received written comments, and we also discussed the concerns that we received from the State Allocation Board during their last meeting and the discussion at the last meeting. And I think to summarize the major concerns, there were two major concerns that we heard from State Allocation Board members. First is that if we if we have a change in program potentially coming, how would a district know that the cash that was the funding level that was determined under an existing program would still be the funding level that was determined that would be available to them under a new program if the programs were actually changed? And of course, the fundamental concern that I think we hear from our Allocation Board members, some of them, was are we creating an unfunded liability for the state of California, or a guarantee of future funding, even though it's not a guarantee? Is there an issue with that by the creation of a true unfunded list? The Implementation Committee members voiced very strong support for continuing some type of State Allocation Board approved project list. And we finally focused on what was the importance of that for school districts, and it gives districts a place in line, a kind of certainty that they know, where they sit in relation to other districts in terms of potentially processing their applications. It does allow projects to proceed on a local level with an anticipation of future funding. For example, districts could fund with their local bonds and then use a reimbursement of a state program at a later time. And even with an understanding that there's no guarantee of future funding and that program changes could reduce the funding, having some type of board-approved project list does provide local districts the ability to continue building and modernizing schools throughout California. And finally, the committee did discuss and strongly supported setting aside administrative cost funding for an interim period, and that'll be part of the recommendations that we take back to the State Allocation Board. Next, we looked at SB 128 Lowenthal, and we looked at the part of the law that relates to career technical education facilities, and it allows districts to access HPI grants for their career tech projects above the CTE maximums of $1.5 million and $3 million for, that are in the program. And OPSC, after lengthy discussion at 2 previous meetings and a lot of good work in-house, presented the proposed implementation option, which would be that CTE projects that participate in the HPI program and meet the thresholds through DSA approval of 27 points for new construction and 20 points for modernization would be eligible for what we call the HP BIG. That is the High Performance Base Incentive Grant, which is a part of the High Performance Schools program. And as you can see on the slide, the High Performance Base Incentive Grant for new construction is $150,000 per project, and for modernizations or additions to existing sites, $250,000. And the recommendation from staff, which was supported by the committee, was that we would not then go to the next step. So for a typical high-performance school program, their project, they're eligible not just for the HP BIG, but also for a percentage-based increase in their per-pupil grant amount. But because of the unique nature of the career tech projects, it was impossible to make a real fit in that program and meld those 2 programs together. What are the next steps on 128? We're going to come back with the final proposed regulations for our meeting in April, and anticipate also taking that to the State Allocation Board for the meeting in April. Finally, we took another round on the project information worksheet that the board had asked us to look at, and staff presented a compilation of all of the input that we had received from stakeholders in our previous meetings, and asked for considerations and issues. In other words, if we looked at this particular piece of input, like reduce the number of submittals, what are the different concerns or issues about removing the first submittal, the second submittal, the third submittal? And we discussed those various ideas. To be honest with you, the committee got very, very focused, and what we call around here, got into the weeds a little bit, and we looked very, very closely at not just the issue of what areas we could provide for auto population, like using the 5004 to provide the project funding inputs on the PIW, but we also looked at the project cost section. The project cost section is on the first page of the PIW, and it's probably the most fundamental piece of information that we have in the PIW, because it's the one thing that for sure the state does not have anywhere, which is, district, what did you actually spend on this project? Not what did you report on a 5006, but what were all of the costs that you had beyond everything it took you to build a school. And this is an important piece of information, and we looked at how that information is structured and what the issues would be to simplify the reporting of that information. So staff is working on some mock-ups of how we could do the auto population of the worksheets, and we're looking at our project funding and project cost sections. And we're going to focus, I think, in our next steps on what are the things that we can do to streamline and make the PIW easier for school districts, but that don't require regulatory change. In other words, that we can just implement in a simple way with the support and the approval of the State Allocation Board. And that's my report, and I'm going to turn it over now, assuming there's no questions, to the California Department of Education, and Fred Yeager and Kathleen Seaborn.
Good morning. Kathleen and I will talk to you today about what's going on across the river on a couple topics. First of all, we have been have a new field representative starting with us tomorrow, Rob Corley, probably a name familiar to some of the folks. We'll talk more about him later once we get him on board. So no assignments or territories yet, but that will be coming. And then the educational program consultant, we're in process for that and hope to have someone in place mid-May, late May on that. Okay. Some upcoming events, National Bike to School Day, a good chance to let your schools know that here's an opportunity to work on ways to increase fitness, reduce your vehicle miles traveled. So that's the first annual Bike to School Day on May 9th. Check out that webpage. A couple funding opportunities. Energy Commission has some low interest energy efficiency loans, 3% interest. So check out their webpage. That's for helping with lighting or insulation, any number of the energy efficient things. Safe Routes to School. This is the state program that helps districts and work with their cities and counties in finishing sidewalks, crosswalks, some other capital improvements to help get the kids to school closer. It's due March 30th. Really that's a reminder to mail it in, because if you haven't started it, it's probably kind of late to do that. Okay. That's Friday, I believe. Okay. So that's all I have, and Kathleen will get you up to speed on the green ribbons.
Good morning. Kathleen Seaborn, School Facilities and Transportation Division. Last month I shared with you that we began implementation of the Green School Award Program, and I just wanted to give you a little update on where we were with that. It was a two-step process, and we've completed both steps. In February, we asked schools to submit an application, and I'm pleased to say that we had 46 applicants who went and endured the very lengthy application. It was about 18 pages long. And with that, we met with our colleagues, including OPSC and Department of State Architecture, and we went through and scored all the applications, then submitted four nominees to the feds last Thursday. Now, the feds asked us to, we could submit up to a maximum of 4, and with regards to, we could submit 3 public schools, one of which needed to be a school of disadvantaged students, and we defined that by students who were enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program. And it was interesting to see that when we looked at all the applications submitted, over half of our applications were from schools with highly disadvantaged student populations. We submitted the 3 public schools, and in addition, the California Department of Ed had an option to submit also a private school. We worked with the California Association for Private Schools, and CASPO then worked with us, and they actually reviewed the private school applications and gave us the name of their nominee. And here are the awardees. Just last Thursday, we went down to Southern California and actually had a press conference, kind of a big shindig, on the site of Environmental Charter School. That school is very interesting because it has an 80% disadvantaged student population with 77% Latino and another, I believe, 15% African American student population. So a very minority-centered community with a high disadvantaged population. And still, they were doing wonderful, wonderful activities on the site. The other three that we submitted were Longfellow Elementary School, Grandview Elementary School, and then the private school was up here in the Bay Area called the Athenian School. Now, what I'd like to do, since this was just announced a couple days ago, is provide you some pictures of the schools next month when we come and rejoin. And I think you're going to be very, very impressed with the applications and the activities they're doing. Also, it was interesting to note that many of the sites were very old. And in fact, the first nominee, Environmental Charter High School, was built in 1929. So it does show that good things are happening with minor adjustments at the school sites. Unknown to us and very, a lot of folks predicted that the schools needed to be brand new or just recently modernized. Most of our applicants were from schools that were built in the last 20 years or further back. So I just wanted to remind you that we have a website. If you're curious about this and you'd like to promote this program, I'm pretty sure it's going to continue on into next year. So we've built a website for the school sites and the architects and program managers, and you can go visit that right now to see what the past requirements were for the application process. We also had lots and lots of resources. And this is just a reminder of kind of what it'll look like as you navigate through the links. So what's up next? April 23rd, there will be a federal announcement announcing the federal awardees, and we're very hopeful. We feel that our 4 nominees are quite competitive as we talk with the other states. So we're hopeful that all 4 will be awarded this, and there's even rumors that Michelle Obama will be presenting the awards back in Washington, D.C. on the 23rd. On May 3rd, we're reconvening many of our internal and external agencies to just sit down and look at what we can do, since this was a pilot program, what we can do to improve the whole process and to encourage more schools to not only apply, but to go green. And then finally, May 9th, we have been meeting monthly with all the other state education agencies regarding this program. This year, I believe there was between 30 and 35 states participating. And of course, our goal is to include more states in next year's program. So we're going to hold a debrief. So any of you who were involved with either the school application process or within the state design process, we'd love to hear your feedback so we can improve to enhance our applicant pool. The contact right now is me. When we do hire our new consultant, hopefully we'll be able to train that person to continue to uphold the program. And please continue to contact us because we have a wealth of information to share. I believe then this does conclude the webcast. And so I thank you all for watching and participating here in the audience. Thank you very much.